A question that I get asked a lot is, what's your favourite car? As in the car you would buy with your own money. Forget all the press cars, it's the car that you really, really want to own yourself and just keep forever. I mean, obviously there's certainly classics that spring to mind, of course. But in terms of modernity, in terms of the sort of like the modern cars that are out there, what would I buy? Now, would I go down the route of sort of like pretty much every other influencer and motoring journalist out there and plump myself for a Porsche 911 GT3 RS? No, I don't think I would. Would I go for a Ferrari, a 296? I've never really been a Ferrari man. I respect what they are, just don't really tickle my pickle, if I'm honest with you. What about the new McLaren Artura? Oh, I love the precision of the engineering of McLaren. Of course, it's British. Maybe the new Aston Martin Vantage. I mean, after all, I was an Aston man for years. No. None of those really float my boat. Because the car that I would buy above all others on sale today is this, the Alpine A110S. And to explain to you why, I've brought it to a very quiet corner of France where there just happens to be a motor race on that lasts roughly 24 hours. Welcome to this week's new car review, brought to you from Le Mans in France. Welcome to the Alpine A110S. Please sit down, make yourself comfortable in the house of cars. In 1955 by a young Frenchman by the name of Jean Ridel, and Jean was he was running a Renault dealership, and he was quite young. He was only 24 at the time, but his engineering know-how made sure that he knew exactly what to do to that Renault 4 to give it a little bit more, shall we say, je ne sais quoi. And of course the Alpine brand was born. It was called Alpine because of the hills round about the Alps that he would drive the cars in and test them, and hence the reason why it got the name Alpine. Now, the brand started to gather pace with its own actual cars. They made their own individual cars rather than just tuning hot Renaults. And of course, most famously, in the 1970s, we had the A110, a car that went on to great rallying success. In fact, in 1973, it took what has now become known as the World Rally Championship in its first outing. And of course, success followed through the 1970s. The road car was exceptionally pretty, but its successor, the A310, whilst a great car, never really kind of caught the imagination quite as much as that first A110 did. The company was bought by Renault Group, and throughout the 1980s they did try to sort of like reinvigorate the Alpine brand, although in the UK the car they brought out was just known simply as the Renault GTA, but abroad it was an Alpine. When the car was facelifted, Renault decided to bring back the Alpine badge, and of course the kind of nomenclature that Alpine had been famous for, and the car was rebranded the A610. However, again, it never really caught on. It was a great car, but too many people wanted to sort of like just default to their usual Porsches and Ferraris and Lotuses and leave the Alpines kind of languishing. But in 2017, Renault had another crack at it, and this time they did it properly, because what they did was they looked at the Alpine brand and what it stood for, which was small, compact, lightweight sports cars. And the new A110 was born. And since then, we've seen derivatives of the A110 come and go. We've obviously seen a few sort of special editions. There's the range-topping A110R, which is, well, quite expensive. But it's this middle ground, this A110S, that's really caught my attention. And as I say, having spent the last few days with it, driving through France, I am now prepared to say that it's this one that I think could be the best car that I've ever driven in the modern world. Why? Well, we'll go on to that in a second, but before we do, a couple of things. First of all, it is incredibly noisy here. I am at Le Mans. The Mulsanne Straight is a few hundred yards that way. Tête Rouge corner, they come out of Tête Rouge and go down Mulsanne. You will hear race cars in the background and helicopters flying over and people moving around and fast cars and all sorts. So that's my first apology. But if you want to know more about my trip to Le Mans and what Le Mans is all about, then that's another video on the House of Cars channel. How are you going to know when that video's up? Well, that's simple. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're subscribed to the channel and you press the bell button down at the bottom there, you'll get a notification of when that video is up and running and is live. If you watch the videos and you do enjoy them, then please make sure you give them a thumbs up and do like them. And of course, don't forget, leave me your thoughts and comments down below. Right, let me explain what's so special about this little French sports car. However, before I start the road test, allow me to give you a little brief synopsis about the Alpine A110. So the A110 is a compact mid-engine sports car designed to compete with cars such as Porsche's 718 Cayman and the new Lotus Emira. It's powered by a Renault 1.8 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that produces between 252 brake horsepower and 300 brake horsepower depending on the specification chosen. You have a choice of 4 specifications: the standard car, the GT, this S and the more performance focused R. All cars are equipped with a 7-speed DCT dual clutch gearbox. And prices in the UK range from just under £55,000 to just over £91,000 depending on the model. £91,000 for a 1.8 litre 4-cylinder car. That sounds like an awful lot. Now this one isn't £91,000, but this one is over £60,000 for the spec I have here. So what makes this more special than a Porsche 911 GT3 RS, a Ferrari 296 and a McLaren Artura and the new Aston Martin Vantage, in my book, in my opinion? Well, let's get on with the House of Cars road test review and find out. However, before we do that, and I know somebody's going to mention it, there's a disabled badge there and I'm parked across a few parking spaces. We have been given access to this car park with Alpine through the Le Mans weekend. So that is the reason why this car is here. So please don't put in the comments below that I'm a terrible man for parking a disabled parking spot, because this car park has been given over exclusively to Alpine customers and there is a lot of space here. Right, now I've got that cleared up, let's crack on. Now, as always, I like to start with styling, and I think it's an important place to start, especially with the Alpine A110S, because to me this is retro done right. There is no question in my mind that this is how you make your new car look like your old car without making it look pastiche. They've just done enough, and the car hasn't really aged, I think, since it came out. Bear in mind, this car came out in 2018. We first saw the A110 back then, and here we are in 2024, and I still think it looks as fresh as a daisy. And as I say, you still got enough reference to the Alpines of old without making it look old, if that makes sense. Alright, let me explain why. Alpine's signature across the front is the 4 lamps. The A110, the original A110 from the 1960s, 1970s had this 4-lamp configuration, and this is Alpine's styling signature going forward. Now, a week or so ago, before the Le Mans race, I was in Paris seeing the new A290, the new electric hot hatch, which we've now seen down here. It got its world debut at Le Mans, which is the reason why I came back to France. Now, if you want to know a bit more about that car, then you're going to need to look on my other channel, Auto EV, where I deal with just pure electric cars, okay? So make sure once you've watched this, you go over to Auto EV and have a little look at the new Alpine A290, because that is a cracker. And again, it has this sort of like 4-lamp signature at the front. Very different to the sports car, but that's what you have. So you've got these kind of beautiful kind of cowled sort of like LED headlights at the side there, and then these kind of circular driving lamps in the middle with the sort of like the daytime running lights around it. It's got a real distinctive sort of like face, especially at night when you see it coming towards you. And as I say, it just looks exactly like the original A110. And of course they're cowled into the front nose cone there, and you get this lovely kind of central spine up the bonnet. It's quite a low car, this, but it doesn't make it difficult to get in and out of. I'm quite old and I'm arthritic and fat, so I can get in and out of this very easily. And again, we'll talk about the practicality a little bit later on. It's mid-engine, so the engine is slap bang behind the sort of like the two seats inside the car. But there's a little bit of sort of like cooling down here, and of course there's some aero work going on. And talking of aero, with the A110S, you can have it fitted with the aero kit, which gives it this carbon fibre front splitter here and the rear wing at the back. Now, I wasn't sure about that rear wing at first. I quite liked the purity of the sort of the standard car. But the more time I've spent with this one, the more time I think, if I was to find the money down the back of the sofa, I'd probably have it. And it is carbon fibre, because lightweight is the key with this car. But I'll talk about that a little bit later in the review. Now, round the side of the car is where, again, you see a huge amount of influence on that original A110. It's got this weird kind of long, kind of sloping back, almost slightly carb forward look to the car, and this glass canopy that wraps around the back. Now, the high performance top of the range one, the A110R, gets that finished in carbon fibre. As I say, I mean, it's pretty hardcore and it looks phenomenal. Would I want it? No, I'm not so sure. I like this one. This one's my just sweet spot in the range, if you like. It sits 4mm, the A110S sits 4mm lower than the standard A110 or the A110 GT, and the tyres are 10mm wider. They're very much sort of like performance orientated tyres, as you would expect, because Alpine have gone to their partners, their tyre partners, Michelin, and the car sits on Pilot Sport Cup 2s on this particular car. You've got cross-drilled and ventilated discs obviously up at the front, these lovely orange calipers and these kind of 18-inch wheels on it. Nothing superfluous. I mean, 18 inch is still quite a big wheel, but that's it, that's the size you get. You can't go for anything bigger than that. And again, it's to do with the handling, and I do like that. Alpine swoosh that you get here. Now, the Alpine badge sits here. Now, it's slightly different on this car than it is on the A290, because it's pretty much just reversed on the other side where the petrol filler cap is. But on the new A290, it's sort of turned around almost, because they all want the arrow to be facing the forward. So it looks slightly different on the A290 depending on the side you look at than it does on the A110. These lovely kind of door mounted mirrors that just seem to sort of blend out of the door. And I love this orange colour. You can have it with a two-tone roof. Personally, I quite like it with the single tone colour. I like it like this. And you can also option the standard car up here with the tricolore flag, the French flag, but on the A110S you've got the carbon fibre and then the orange here. And as I say, at the back we go into this rear wing, which is part of the optional aero kit, which I really do like. But God, it's a pretty little car. I love the way this thing looks. And I must admit, despite the fact we're at Le Mans, it's a French car company, Alpine, this car gets amazing looks. I had people taking pictures of the car all weekend. Even on the Eurostar, people were coming up asking to take pictures with the car. It's such a pretty little car. As you come around the back of the car, a bit like the front and the side, there are styling cues that make you that harks back to that original A110S. These lovely, very kind of slim lights that just come wrapped around the side of the car here. And again, they're sort of done in a slight kind of X pattern. Excuse me, and you see that in the A290 hatchback where they've got the X across the front driving lamps. And that's a little bit of a nod to the original rally cars where the lights would be taped up to stop them shattering if they were hit with a stone. So that's kind of where that comes from. As I said, aero kit on this car, so you get this rear wing which has these aluminium mounting brackets just there on the little boot lid and then across the car. It's not too big. That's what I quite like about it. It's not gargantuan and OTT, it's just enough. And as I say, I love the look of the standard car, but this just gives the S just that little bit more, and I like that. Alpine lettering across the back, obviously in black because it's the S, and then the A110S badge there. All A110s get the centrally mounted exhaust system as well, so you get that centre mounted single pipe exhaust coming out the back, and then at the bottom you've got the kind of rear diffuser area. There is a reverse camera tucked underneath there, and of course you get your reversing sensors across. Now, as I say, the R gets a carbon fibre cover at the back here, so there's no rear window on the R, but the standard car, the GT, and obviously the S get this rear hatch, where it actually allows access into the engine should you know that your local dealership need access into it. And then of course you get the high level mounted brake light up there. What do you think? Do you love it as much as I do? Have you got one? Why did you buy it? Was the looks part of it, or was the heritage of Alpine just too much to resist? or was it the way that it drove? Let me know why you chose one over a Porsche 718 Cayman in the comment section down below. But me, I adore the way this thing looks. Now you might think I'm mad talking about practicality in a mid-engine two-seat sports car, but bear in mind I've come to Le Mans with it for when did I come down? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, today, Sunday. 5 days I've been down here. So how does it work practicality wise? Well, it actually works quite well. There's two boots, there's one behind the engine and there's also one up the front. Now my only downside with it is the actual sort of like aperture that you've got to put it in. The boot lid itself is quite small. It might have been quite nice if the hatch had just come down that little bit further. However, it doesn't. But I've got jacket, a hold all, I've got bags of gifts for my daughter, I've got another bag, another gilet in there, I've got a bag of laundry to go back, and up at the front I've got 2 camera bags. So in fairness, and nothing in the inside, I've not needed to use sort of like the passenger seat for anything. So if you and your significant other can get away with sort of like, you know, just packing everything maybe into a couple of small holdalls or maybe a carry-on, there's more than enough space for a week away. That's good. Yeah, so look, this is the up front storage, and I get my work rucksack, my laptop and everything in it. I get my camera bag in there. I get more gifts in there, and there's still plenty of space at the top there for sort of like the tripod, obviously, that I'm using at the moment, and you know, more jackets. It is a little bit sort of like shallow, so it's not like sort of like, you know, the box that, the Cayman's boot where you can really drop a big bag into. But if it's a sort of like relatively flat bag, or say maybe even just a wheelie bag, you know, one of those carry-on suitcases, you'd get it in the front of the A110S, no problem whatsoever. This is practical, this car. Now, as I say, it's a low car, but I don't have a problem getting it. There's no high sill on it like there used to be the old Lotus years and years ago. I used to work for my first Aston Martin dealership back in the 1990s. We were also Lotus, and I ran a Lotus Elise as a company car, an S1 and then an S2 when it came out. So it's not like clambering in and out of those old Elises or Exiges. You know, it's as easy to get in and out of as one of those, you know, kind of modern day sports cars that I mentioned. Its competition being, you know, the new Lotus Emira and of course the 718 Cayman from Porsche. Now, oh, and also, sorry, that bag is just mine that I keep my kind of passport in and my notebook in. I do need that with me, obviously, to get in and out of the Channel Tunnel, but otherwise that would be up at the front, as you'd expect. Right, let's talk about the interior and the cabin. Right, so the A110S, what have we got? Well, we've got the Alcantara across the dashboard and round about the wheels. We've got these Seatbelt seats, which are Alcantara as well. 13 kilos these seats weigh each. The weight is the key with this car. It uses aluminium construction to keep the weight of the car down. I'll talk about that in the technical section, but that is the key with this car, and that's the reason why you don't need anything more powerful than that little 1.8 turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, because trust me, when it comes to performance, this car has more than enough. The first thing that I want to talk about is the comfort, however, because although this is the S, it's a little bit more of a performance-focused car than the standard car or the GT, but even so, I did from Surrey to Le Mans in one hit last Wednesday. It was phenomenal. In fact, I actually went a longer way because I wanted to explore some of the little back roads round about France, so I actually went a slightly longer route, believe it or not, to find some little back roads to throw the car down, and it was just so comfortable. It's such a comfortable car, this, it really is. The driving position is absolutely dead straight ahead. There is no kinking off for your feet or anything like that. There's enough room in the footwell. I'm not a big chap, I'm only 5'8", and I've only got tiny little feet, but even so, anyone with big feet will be able to drive this car. There's no clutch on the car. You've got the 7-speed dual clutch transmission with the paddles here, and it does a full automatic mode as well. You don't have another choice with that. But the foot room in here is just epic. There's loads of it, so you got a nice placed accelerator pedal, a really easy brake, and the relationship between the pedals is just a pivot. It's just that. Your foot, your heel doesn't even move off the carpet, and it just pivots it round and straight onto the brake. Phenomenal. The wheel itself is just beautiful in terms of how sort of like the diameter of it, the thickness of the rim, slightly flattened off at the bottom, not too much, not, you know, sillily so. And again, just nice. There's not a huge amount of buttons on it. There's only buttons for adjusting sort of like the cruise control, putting on the cruise control and adjusting that. That's it. The volume and radio selection and everything for your phone is down on the separate kind of third stock that Renault drivers will be familiar with. I used to have it on my Megane E-Tech long term at Auto EV, and it's really easy to use down there. And there is, you know, enough kind of physical buttons in the car. We've got them across here. You've got a stop-start facility, which you can switch off. You've got an ESC button here, and again we talk about how the car drives in the performance and handling section. Hazards, locking, and switching the screen on and off, and then that's it. Wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in here, which is ideal. There's no wireless charging for your phone, so you've got to use a cable. But underneath here, look at the space that you've got. You know, underneath here with this kind of rubberized tray. I get my sunnies in there, and that's a big sunglasses case. My phone sits down there as I'm driving. There's a little slot there for my SANF tag, where you could put your wallet in there. Engine stop start. Window switches are here, and electronic parking brake, and again speed limiter and activation of the cruise control back there. My only criticism, and you're going to laugh at this, and I don't mind saying it in fairness, is the lack of a cup holder. There's a space back here where you can put your water bottle and your coffee flask here, but it's not shaped to take them. It's just a space that they fall into. But if there was just a little rubber grommet in there where it would just take them, then that would be, I couldn't fault it. There's nothing else you need. There's an optional storage kind of box there, if you like, which again is handy to have, but not necessary, just depending how much you want to carry. And there's some netting behind the seats, you know, just slot some paperwork in. Other than that, what's not to love in here? There's more than enough space for two. You don't feel that you're banging elbows with each other. You know, you get good visibility out. There's a focal audio system. There's an upgraded one you can have as well if you do, you know, appreciate your music a little bit more. And everything's just dead simple and easy to use. This nice kind of carbon fibre infill around here. The Alcantara, again, just down the side here with the orange stitch. The materials feel nice. Yeah, okay, do you know what? There's a little bit of plastic on the doors and the bottom of here, but it feels quality, and there's not a squeak or a rattle from this car at all driving down here. And this one's done over 4,000 miles, and 4,000 hard miles as a press demonstrator. And this thing is just beautiful, absolutely beautifully built. Now the GT model, you can have this sort of like with leather inside, and the standard car with different materials, and then you go further when the one above the R, the one above the S, which is the A110R, which is really focused. These seats are absolutely superb, manually adjustable, fixed backs on them, but again, you know, I'm old and arthritic, as I say, and they just hold me right. And as I say, the hours drive, whatever it was, 6 hours I spent in the car the other day, not a problem at all. I just got out to put fuel in it, that was it. And I didn't feel achy or tired or anything driving the car. And whether it was on the French motorways, or whether it was on the back roads, giving it the absolute beans, it just did it. I love it. I can't fault this. It's perfect almost. Now the Alpine A110 uses a 1.8 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, and it's mounted in the midships here. This is fixed, this canopy. Apologies if I said that it moved earlier, it comes up, it doesn't. You can get access to the top of the engine from the top there, but I think it's all mostly done from underneath, so apologies if that I've misled you on that. In the standard car, the A110 and the GT, the more luxurious GT, the engine produces 252 brake horsepower, which sees the car go from 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds. If you move up to the S, it moves up in power of the engine to 300 brake horsepower, which I think, as I say, is the sweet spot in the range, and the 0 to 60 time dips to 4.2 seconds. If you want to go quicker than that, then you plump for the A110R. It's the same power as the S, 300 horsepower, but because it's lighter weight, it dips below the 4 seconds on that 0 to 60 sprint. Now, talking of weight, that's the important figure, because a standard car weighs just 1,102 kilograms. That is light. And this S, although it's the more powerful car, is 1109 kilos, because it's got a couple of extra bits and pieces. I remember saying bigger tyres on it, so that's 1109 kilograms. But what they've done to the S, and then subsequently the R, is they have increased the stiffness of the springs and the dampers on the vehicle, and also the anti-roll bars are twice as stiff as they are on the standard car. It also has its own unique settings in the ESC system, but there's no limited slip differential on the car, and the reason for that is pure and simply it adds weight, and Alpine didn't want to do that. And I have to say that unless you're actually properly track focused when it comes to your driving, then I would say it's not really necessary. The car handles beautifully without it, and I have to say I don't miss it whatsoever. Now, talking of the handling, that's quite important as well, because the weight distribution of the car, with it being a mid-mounted engine, what you have is a near perfect distribution. It's 44% weight at front, 56 at the back, and of course the perfect weight would be 50-50, but it does mean with that slight rear bias on the weight, you do get a bit more weight over the rear axle, which gives you that better traction as you're coming out of the corners. The way this chassis is set up is absolutely sublime, and of course, as I said earlier, it's aluminium, which keeps it light. Now, how the A110S performs, I think, is quite spectacular. And it's not just because it's some hard-edged Focus sports car, you know, like I mentioned at the beginning, you know, the 911 GT3 RS or anything like that. It's not that. It's the way in which it just seems to blend comfort and precision. I've genuinely never driven a car like it, and I've driven some really special cars. You know, you think it's almost the way that Lotus used to do it in some respects. You know, they used to do handling and ride quality and all this, but this is on another level. I genuinely don't know how they've done it. Because, and I'm going to talk about the ride quality first, because that's the bit that really takes you by surprise. You know, cruising on the big kind of open French roads here, and it's very, very smooth, it's very flat, and it's lovely. But even when it's not, you know, when you're round about town and you're going across a speed bump, or you're back in the UK, and, you know, I was going across manhole cover, where you would normally expect some kind of a jolt, some kind of, you know, as the wheel kind of hits whatever it is, you know, the surface change or the imperfection in the road, you don't get it. It just, you know it's there, but it's like it's just hit it with a cushion. It's weird. There's no jolt, there's no, oh God, that was a drain hole cover. You go, what was that? Genuinely, it's absolutely incredible what they've done with the ride quality of this car. A car that handles the way that this one does. It's mind-blowing, I think, personally. Let's talk a little bit about the performance of the car. Now, the A110S gets a more powerful version of that 1.8 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder. Power goes up from 252 brake horsepower of the standard car to 300 brake horsepower in the S. The A110R also gets 300 horsepower. 340 newton meters of torque, which doesn't sound like a lot, but actually it's enough because there is no weight to the car. That's the thing, there is no weight to it. It weighs next to nothing. In something that weighs the size of a, you know, something that weighs as much as a Jacob's cracker, you don't need that much torque. You know, even in the automatic mode, which I'm in at the moment because I'm out on the open road, you know, you put your foot down, the car just slingshots you down the road. It's fabulous. But here I am cruising down the French motorway at 130 kilometers an hour, which is the legal limit in France, by the way. And it's like I'm just tootling around. It's quiet, it's comfortable, there's no wind noise, I can listen to my radio. I've got a little bit of engine noise, it's right behind me, but it's nice engine noise as well. It has got that kind of piped engine noise. See there, I've just slightly gone over that white line. You had the you don't feel it. It's just, it's brilliant. It's epic, this car. It's superb. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, noise levels. Yeah, you can hear the engines there. If I put my foot down, you get a little turbo whistle, which I love. Just feels special, and it just makes it feel much more than just a 1.8 4-cylinder engine, you know? Now, I've got a little button on the steering wheel marked Sport. If I press that, things change, so things sharpen up. The steering, we'll talk about that in a minute. But if I now go into, it's still in automatic mode. If I press the D button again, it flicks over to M, which means I now have control of the gearbox. Oh! On your cell! It's just sublime. Why do you need more than that? Genuinely. Why are you sitting there, you know, in your 911 GT3 RSs or 911 turbos or Ferrari 296s and McLaren 750Ss going, oh, it's got squillion horsepower and stuff. Why? What more do you need? And yet when I'm not in the mood for it, D, come out of Sport. It's like driving my Jeep Grand Cherokee. In fact, it's nicer, smoother. Steering. It is power assisted, but I genuinely am going to tell you now, I have never felt steering like this, other than maybe the Elise. The Lotus Elise is a car that is probably on a par with this one when it comes to steering. It doesn't feel like there is anything between you and the front tyres. Your hands are literally moving the front. You can feel exactly what they're doing. You know, although I'm on a motorway, you know, you put them into the car, into a bend, you know you just get enough feedback off the dead ahead. You can just feel it, and it tells you what's happening. But it doesn't tell you in an uncomfortable way by transmitting road roar and noise and bumps and harsh surfaces through the helmet. That's just not there. It's as close to telepathy as you will ever get when it comes to having a steering wheel in front of you. It is sublime. I adore this car. It doesn't come with a manual gearbox. I don't want one. This is perfect. I can, you know, when I'm in the mood for it, I've got the paddles that just respond just like that. The gear shift itself is slick. It just changes immediately. On the downshift, if I go back into sport mode, I'm in 7th. Yeah, that wee pop and bang. Alpine, you have created something that I'm in absolute love with. This is Hannah Waddingham in a car. I adore this thing. I genuinely, you know, when everyone drove the A110, all the press drove it, you know, James May, he bought one, Gordon Murray bought one, and everyone came along and said, wow, what a car. What an absolute belter. You know, they've got the essence of what makes a good driver's car right there, and you go, yeah, okay, you know, I'll take it. And here we are, 7 years after its launch, and I can't believe there's anything on the market that will drive as well as this does. I really can't. It's an absolute sensational car. End of. I genuinely mean this. I don't see why you would ever want anything more than what this car can offer you. It's comfortable, it's quiet when it wants to be, it's precise, it's as sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. It delivers enough performance that anyone could just deal with, and yet, as I say, when you're not in the mood for it, you're cruising back, you've got to get to that Eurotunnel, it's all motorway up the road. It sits here at 130 kilometres an hour with the air conditioning on, with my coffee there, listening to whatever is on my Spotify playlist. It's perfection. That's what it is. Perfection. Right. If you want one, what's it going to cost? Well, if you plump for a standard car, then basically what you're looking at is £54,500, give or take a few pennies. If you want a GT, then it's quite a jump up, in fairness. A GT model, which gives you the kind of leather seats and sort of like, you know, bits of different kind of accoutrements inside, different set of wheels, things like that, that's going to cost you £65,500. If you want an A110S, like I've got here, then that starts at £67,500. A little bit more extra for this particular car because it's got the aero kit on it and the metallic paint finish. But if you want the R, the real track-focused car, then that's a big jump up. That's £91,500. Now, there has been some special edition models in amongst all of that as well. So, you know, things such as, I think the San Remo was one, there's the Enstone edition, and a couple of other little bits and pieces in there. There's a Legend one, there's a Le Mans edition as well. So there's a few special editions. So just do your research if you're looking through sort of like the classifieds, maybe for a car, if you're looking at for maybe a pre-owned Alpine A110S. But the one thing I'll say about it is this: the ownership experience from what I've seen in the last 5 days is off the scale. Enthusiast. There's a guy just driven down here in an A110R who saw me filming and wanted just to come and say hello and talk about his car. A guy called Mark. Hi Mark, hope you have a safe drive back. And he's got the most epic looking A110R in white. It just looked phenomenal. So, and in terms of obviously the competition of the car, we know that the Lotus Emira isn't as cheap as we maybe thought it was going to be. That's an £80,000 car. And I know that it's a V6, but you can obviously get it with turbocharged 4. I don't think it's as good a car as this. And with the Cayman, 718 Cayman, again, whilst you can get them sort of like round about this price, by the time you've added a few bits and pieces onto it, we know that the price of those skyrocket up. So in terms of value for money, and bearing in mind what you're driving is something quite special, I do think that actually represents good value for money. I say that with a pinch of salt, because it's still 60 grand. I think by now you'll have got a measure of my feelings towards this car. And as I said, I'm as bold to say that I don't think there is a new car on sale today that I want to own as much as this car. I've never driven a car, and bear in mind I have driven some of the world's fastest and most comfortable and most, you know, rarest and quickest and all the rest of it cars over 30 years been in the motor trade, 20 years with Aston Martin. But I don't think I've driven a car that has the blend of attributes that this A110 has. And it's a small, 4-cylinder, turbocharged, mid-engine sports car. It's the car that I want to get up early on a Sunday morning and just go for a blast in. It's a car that, bear in mind, it's now early afternoon on a Sunday after 5 days of France, a motor race, a 24-hour race, that I have to drive back to the UK, and now I'm not even giving it a second thought. In fact, such is the draw with this car, I might come off the motorway and find some decent back roads with it. I adore this car. It is simply sensational. If you haven't driven an Alpine A110S and you are in the market for a small 2-seater sports car, if you're in the market for a supercar, go and drive one of these, because trust me, I think you will be absolutely blown away with how competent that this car actually is. It is an absolute sensation, and that's why people like Gordon Murray, the McLaren F1 designer, he owns an Alpine A110S. As far as I'm concerned, never mind my endorsement, that's the endorsement I think you should take notice of. In fact, I've done something a bit naughty. Now, my wife doesn't know this, but since I've been down in France with this car, I've put my hand in my pocket. Unheard of for a Scotsman, but I have. I've pulled the plug. And I bought myself a hat. All right, it's only a hat, but you know what? It's a start. It's some of the way there. I'll need to find the rest of the cash for the rest of it. Thank you for watching another episode of House of Cars and my new car review on the Alpine A110S. Please, as I say, make sure that you are subscribed to the House of Cars channel, and if you have enjoyed this episode, then make sure you give it a wee thumbs up. It's quite a new channel, We're still in the throes of getting started. I hope you like what I'm doing, and if you do, then please, please, please give me your support, because I really do appreciate it. Leave me your thoughts down below as well. If you know, let me know what you think. Do you own one of these? I see you like the guy Mark that's just been down to see me. Do you have one? So what do you like about it? Why did you buy it? Did you buy it over something else? Did you have Porsches before and went to Alpine? Let me know your thoughts on that. Now, if you want to know about the new Alpine A290, their hot hatchback, then as I say, remember, that's an electric car, so that's going to be covered on Auto EV. And if it's electric cars you're into, then that's where you need to find all about there. I'm over there on Auto EV, so please have a look there. I am on Instagram as well. It's House of Cars 1973, so give me a wee follow there as well. And as I say, watch out for more content coming from me soon, because we've got an awful lot more interesting cars. I do tend to stick with more kind of left field stuff rather than mainstream stuff, but there will be things on there that I think that you might just enjoy, including some classic cars which are coming up. One that I'm driving back tonight, to make sure that I'm back in time to go and drive tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to that car very much. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching. Thank you for supporting me. From down here in Le Mans, a very noisy Le Mans, which unfortunately the two Alpine hypercars failed to finish. Never mind. Thanks once again for watching. I will see you again soon. I've now got to take this back to the UK, and the bad man from Renault's coming to pick it up. Ah well, never mind. At least I got my hat.